that what he has said or she revealed to you is the truth. Now, if Elisha was not, didn't know for himself that Elijah was going to be taken and see it, his faith would have been shaken into thinking that God took his master and dropped him on a hill somewhere where there's no help. But Elisha had seen and knew for himself that God had taken his master. And guess what? He told them, you don't have to. But then they insisted. And after they had, let us read it. Elijah answered, no, don't send men to look for Elijah. The group of the prophets begged Elisha until he was embarrassed. That they cannot find him, and he told them, but I told you not to look for him. He had seen for himself. May we also be a people who have seen God for ourselves, that we cannot be shaken, that we cannot be swayed easily right and left about what is right, about what is wrong, about who God is. When I was younger, about 16, I wanted to know for myself that he is God. And the reason I was giving was because I didn't want to be deceived when I go to school where there are all kinds of teachings, because I had the fear that when you go to higher levels of learning, there's a paper they call Divinity where they disprove God and make what you have always known and read as a child as good and right, they turn it into being wrong and not good. So I was like, God, reveal yourself to me that I may know you for myself. That even when I meet people who say you are not there, I know for myself that you're actually there. This Elisha had now proved for himself that his master was taken by God. And for starters, he knew that it is God going to take him. So when the prophets came, I mean, these are not common people we're talking about. These are prophets. When they came saying, he's probably on a mountain somewhere, we need to find him, he was like, okay, go ahead and find him. But he knew they would not. And when they came back and told him after 3 days they couldn't find him, he said, but I told you. Let us read that portion. Elisha said in verse 20, okay, no, that is after. Yeah, in verse 18, it says, so the men went to Jericho where Elisha was staying and told him. Elisha said to them, I told you not to go. We need to be at that place where we are sure or confident about that which God has revealed to us. That is one way we can please him. Because God does not like people who doubt. He likes people who have faith. Now these are prophets, but they thought God had taken him and put him at some mountain somewhere. Our relationship with God varies. Even the people who you think and hold in high regard can stray. But if you hold on to your faith, walk in righteousness, you would know your God for yourself, and you cannot be easily deceived about what is right and about what is wrong. Just like you see here, Elisha knew for himself that his master had been taken by God and they were not going to find him anywhere. Now there's also this setting, the verses that follow, like verse 19, it talks about when Elisha makes water good. Yeah. Now Elisha is starting to walk in miracles after the mantle has been passed over to him. Every time we go out before it is time, we will not be able to achieve that which God has called us to do. But when we go in the right time, we are able to achieve more. Now that goes to show you as well that he had had the training, the time to experience the God of Elijah. Elijah would just speak and it was. So you see here, Elisha is also starting off in the same way. He speaks and then leaves the rest to that. He speaks, that fire comes. Now he found they approached him about the water, that the water was causing people to die and it was bitter. And he asked for salt. Now there are people who believe all kinds of things about salt, but I'm just going to shed some light about salt. When the children of Israel were given sets of things that they should do and sacrifices. God told them that whenever they bring a sacrifice, if they put salt on it, then God would find it acceptable. So that is where we learn the tradition of salt, or the culture or the custom of putting salt. Now, we cannot go and worship salt, but salt presented before God, it is something that He will accept. Now, I'll give you an example. I can buy land, and I don't know what has happened to that land before me. Guess what I can do? I can get some salt, sprinkle it over, and say, God, I dedicate this land to you. Come and take over. And then God will come and possess the land. And whatever it is that had clothed over the land can be lifted because of the covenant of salt that is talked about in Leviticus, of salt. So that is where you see that thing of salt. Now, Elisha knew that, and so he got the salt. And because of his relationship with his God, he got the salt and poured it in the water. And the Bible says the water became good from that day on. But he did not just get salt. Elisha, the Bible says in verse 21, Elisha threw the salt into the water and said, I am making this water pure from now on. This water will not cause any more death or keep the land from growing crops. The water became pure and is still good to today. It happened just as Elisha had said. Now, when we use the covenant of salt, we have to speak over it and say, God, I'm covenanting this to you. From today on, it will not be this, but it will be this. It will not be a curse, but it will be a blessing. But children of God have forgotten some of these things, and the heathen have taken them up to the next level, and they use them for wickedness. And yet we children of God are getting by, not practicing some of these things. You can dedicate your land with, because God said, whatever you present before me, if sealed with the salt, then I will accept it. So that's where the covenant of salt comes in, if anyone was having a question about it. Now again, we see in verse 23, some boys made fun of Elisha. And Elisha went, the Bible says in verse 23, Elisha went from that city to Bethel. He was walking up the hill to the city, and some boys were coming down out of the city. They began making fun of him. They said, go away, you bald-headed man. Go away, you bald-headed man. Now, if there is anything we can learn from this portion, is not to make fun of people's imperfections. It is not a good thing. It is not of God, because they did not go out there to pick their imperfections. God just gave them the way He did. And it is wrong if you make fun of them. Say like you meet someone who is blind, and then you make fun, and yet they've been blind from childhood. Do you think they chose that when God was creating, they said, make me without eyes or make me without the ability to see? That, if it's not anywhere written in the Bible, is just something. It goes to show that the person who does that is far from God. Because you cannot have the heart of God and not feel for this person that cannot see. And you make fun of them because for you, you can see. I think that is wrong on any account. Now, Elijah responded in heart and in pain, and there was cause for his curse to land. Why? They had hurt him. Someone can curse you, and the curse has no ground to land. Why? Because there was no cause. You did nothing to be cursed, and so the curse may pass. But if there is reason for the curse to land, it will land. Now these boys had laughed and made fun of him, saying, go away, you old bald-headed man. Now in 24 it says, Elisha looked back and saw them. He asked the Lord to cause the bad things to happen to them. Then 2 bears came out of the forest and attacked the boys. There were 42 boys ripped apart by the bears. Can you imagine the pain the parents had to go through because of the foolishness of their boys? And I bet you no one could imprison him because there was no proof he was behind it all. But then you can ask yourself, were the bears waiting so that he may come and says, may bad things happen to them? It goes to show you that each time you do something good, there is good waiting to happen to you. But each time you do something bad, it's like earth is waiting to give you back what you've put out there, whether you are a child, whether you're not, because these children knew it hurts. That is why they were using it against him. Now, what is it that we are using against fellow people? What is it that we are using against them? Is it their imperfection that we are using to always put in their faces? If that person you are making fun of is one who spends time with their God, my dear, we have learned that it's from their mouth to God's ears. Whatever they will say will have ground with you. So watch what you say and how you treat people, because you never know their relationship with God. I've seen God